So, City Muga is looking at his Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, and it's telling him today is the 21st day of November. It's telling him it's 10 days to what that thing called? Hustler Fund. It's giving him, so he still hasn't started counting days from for the route of presidency.
You know, I count all days. Okay. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
Everything.
They are days, aren't they?
All right.
It's when someone tells me 30 days. It's all days.
Refer to your tab now.
Yes.
The Tab S8 Ultra.
Okay.
Tell us the proverb from Western Sahara.
Well, yes. Just so that you can observe. That's what the screen looks like.
It looks like Western Sahara.
It does, doesn't it, just? Yeah. It looks like the sand dunes.
It's gone off.
Well, that was briefly. The idea was not for you to fix your eyes on it, but momentarily see it.
Sour.
Believe what you see and lay aside what you hear.
Believe what you see and lay aside what you hear.
That's what it is.
This one from Western Sahara.
It is from Western Sahara.
Okay. Let's bring in our guest now, WINNIE ODINGA, who is the MP-elect for the East African Legislative Assembly. WINNIE, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Us guys?
Yeah?
We're fine. How about you?
I'm getting used to that term you just called me. When I was walking here, somebody was shouting with Shimiwa. And I was asking, who is that he's calling? I've never been called that before.
What did you think it was going to be?
I didn't think.
Oh, no?
And I don't like it. I'm not used to it. I don't like it.
You don't want to be called Mweshimiwa?
Just call me WINNIE.
Okay, WINNIE.
Yeah.
There's a Kenyan phrase. Utazoea.
In fact, you should be most worried if I Zoea.
Really?
You should make sure I should never get comfortable with that.
With this one.
Yeah.
WINNIE, you are the one who applied to be a member of the East African Legislative Assembly.
Yes,
are you
I
not?
did. Yes, I did.
To your party, ODM?
No, you actually apply to the clerk of the National Assembly, and then the clerk forwards your name to your party. And your party then decides on the nomination list.
Okay.
Yes.
Why did you want to join EALA?
Why did I want to join EALA is because I think that Kenya, the world, the region is losing a lot by young people not getting involved in active participation of their civic duty. And the opportunity came about. It wasn't something that I can say I stayed up nights dreaming about, but it's something that I think I'll be able to help a lot more people with.
When did that idea get into your head?
I've been trending for 3 months. So the day somebody started the thing that I had applied, I hadn't. And I tweeted back that I have not. And people started saying, you have to.
Then you should.
You should, yeah. And so I did.
I mean, at least let the thing they accuse you of be true.
Let something be true.
Okay. All right. So what was your thinking? So when you finally said, okay, fine, let me go for this thing, did that thought, the initial thought that you've talked about now, that young people should be a lot more involved in their local and regional and global politics and decisions, did it resonate again when you said, okay, so there's Twitter pressure, should I do this thing? Or which one was weighing heavier on the scale? The inclusion and the participation, or the social media pressure to do something?
Social media is not real life. If people spoke in real person how they speak on social media, we would be at war constantly. But however, it is a gauge to tell some feelings. It is used to influence other people. But it was now coming down to real life. And the real life people reach me on my phone. But I was getting those abuses on my phone and different things like that. They reached me, and I think that outweighed whatever else was going on online. Yes.
Okay. What do you hope to do with this seat?
I can give you the generic answer. Of course, I want to make change.
Give us the real one, the one that was the one from the lab.
How about I tell you? I can sit here and I can bore you guys on policies, non-trade barriers, all those other things, all those other good things. But I think it's important for me to start with my thinking, how I think. So I'm a student of this thing called design thinking. And design thinking is when you think of the user's experience in mind. So you think of the end user's experience in mind. So in everything that you create, that's where you begin. So if I'm going to EALA and I'm talking about changing the lives of ordinary Kenyans here in Nairobi, let's say Yule Msewa Nduthi, how does me going to EALA help him? In a larger scale, all these policies will eventually impact him. But right now, how does this position benefit him? So before I can go in there, I have to do a social audit. Yeah, I have to begin with the question why. I have to think of his experience. What is he doing right now? Maybe he's just woken up right now. Ako kwa base, jaba kidogo. He's doing his thing. He's got a bike. He's taken his bike. At the end of the day, he's earned 2,000 shillings. Of that 2,000, what's his experience? 1,000 goes to the owner of the bike. After that, 50 bob every day has to go to the SACCO. Fuel, 400 maybe. No, fuel, 500. So where are we now?
He's left with 450.
450? So that thing they call salad, the cooking oil, a liter now is 400. Yeah. So at best, he can maybe get some food for 200, put 200 on the side for rent at the end of the month, which is 5,000. So I have to enter his mind. So what does he want to do? He wants things that can open up the space so he can have more money in his pocket, more markets and whatever. So after I've done that and I've taken his experience, then I do a plan. Just hold that for a second because I'm coming back to it. So if you look at how the EU began, for example, the EU began in about 1952. That was, World War II was 1945, 7 years after World War II. The EU was began by members of this union for coal and steam. And they said, let's do business together so that if we do business together, we'll have no reason for war. So their thing was to end war, right? Are you with me?
Yep.
We're with you.
So
End
they said,
opportunities and
to end
reason
war,
to fight.
let's invest in each other's countries so that if anybody wants to attack, if we want to attack Congo, you'll be like, hey, no, Kenyans are there. Equity Bank is there. We're the biggest bank in Congo. Let's not do that. If you wanted to attack in France or whatever, you had reasons not to. And since then, there's been no active war between. So back to my thinking, what's the point of the EAC? Perhaps to eradicate poverty. What are some of the things? I don't know. Pick something. Let's just say it's poverty.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
By better integration, opening up trades.
Trade.
Yeah, but
ensuring that there's
yeah.
better harmony between among the peoples.
True. But let's say it's poverty.
Yep.
Now, right now, we're these individual, small countries. So you take the question, why do we have poverty? You take the question further. What has been the reason these countries which produce agricultural products are not succeeding? You take the question further, is it because of a lack of programs? Is it because of that? So for me, that's my thing. I'm perennially asking the question why, understanding the reason why, and then making laws to fix it.
So this thing that you want to do to sort out this Msewa Boda, right?
Yeah.
Who is earning 2,000 bob a day, and you want to expand the opportunities. Why the East African community? Why not
Because,
the Kenyan assembly? Why not a county assembly?
So, for example, in the EALA, I heard Kennedy speaking about the single monetary unit. EALA has done its part on legislation. But what are the benefits or what are the problems of it now? If you're going to Tanzania from here or any country in the EAC, there's a bank at the border. A border bank where your shilling is switched for another currency, and you come back, and every time, constantly, there's changes in that. So you're not able to move freely, you're not able to go buy things in other countries as freely. But what this does in the end with the union is that when you're speaking to people who are meant to give Kenya money, you're not just talking about Kenya alone, you're talking about an East African GDP. You have something bigger to bank on. And from that point, you can be able to get more access to funds that you can use programs to impact this guy of border. If we're saying agriculture, part of the reason for this poverty I was talking about can be, what do you call it, when many countries are doing the same things, like producing the same thing.
What the
comparative advantage. Yeah. So perhaps as an agricultural hub, we're all producing the same things. But which of these countries makes the best lemons, if I was to ask you? I used to ask this question in the campaign. The best lemons are made in Kenya. Where in Kenya? Do you know? Could you take a guess?
No, I would not
Kilifi
hazard a
County.
guess.
Yeah. The best lemons in Kenya for export are made in Garissa because of the conditions, the altitude, the Tana River. The biggest and most bitter lemons for export are made in Garissa. Yeah. And that's a part of Kenya that we don't see as an agricultural hub. So you start saying, okay, all of us, these countries are making lemons. Kenya, you focus on the lemon. Perhaps Burundi, you make us the limes. Okay? So now you've given this Msewa options. Yeah. The other day I was in Siaya and somebody was growing coffee. What we never knew, right by the lake, is that the altitude is the same as Limuru. So in Alego, he's growing using the Ruru 11 coffee seed. He's growing Arabica coffee in Alego. Yeah. He's growing it and he's exporting it. But all his neighbors have just been growing maize. So now he's showing them, hey, you can start growing this thing. There's something I've been perennially saying in South Nyanza about sugarcane. And if you've ever had a sweetener, it's called the stevia.
Yep.
You know stevia? Of course you do. You guys are educated. The stevia plant, the stalk, grows taller than the sugarcane plant. Same conditions, same space, but one stalk gives you 1.5 more sugar than a sugarcane plant. So if the sugar industry is dead, pivot, switch. Why are we importing sugar from Uganda? Let them do the sugarcane. If it's not working here, we have to switch. We have to find newer ways of doing things. We have to give people options. Nobody grows up saying he wants to ride the Ndudi. Nobody's here. They left home because there were no options. So we give them options back at home.
How do we make that happen? And I think we're replete with examples of what could work better. We have the buzzwords are flying in our face all the time of how people come to Kenya to benchmark, etc., etc. Now we're looking at this in light with some hope of some kind of congruence with everybody else in the region. How do you make it happen in Kenya to then influence the rest of the community, the rest of the countries that make up the assembly? How then will this happen? Because I hear your thoughts and I can see where your thinking goes. How then will these threads of thinking come out with this garment that would be the region?
So I know I've said a lot of things, but there's an intricate plan to each of it. The first thing is to begin at home. And here at home, I have the benefit of knowing, and in fact, I was told that since I'm a Mheshimiwa now, I have to use diplomacy, of persuading them. And if not, I know where to squeeze them.
Okay.
But of course, when I go out there, I'm not going to do that. There'll be no mandamano in DRC for me. The one thing about the East Africa Legislative Assembly is they've been widely successful. They've passed all the things they need for us to be a union. Their trouble is in implementation. And the implementation arm is run by the Council of Ministers. Now, the EAC minister, or maybe it's the Foreign Affairs minister when it comes to these things, that ministry doesn't have the impetus as, for example, the Agriculture Ministry. But it's more important than the Agricultural Ministry. Our agricultural ministries in this region will forever perform subpar because they are not looking at the market behind us. We're always looking out there. So it's to create incentives to show them the benefits of these markets. If you have a region with no ID, right now if you go to Tanzania by plane, even your ID they won't allow you, need a passport. If you have a region where I can drive to DRC, this Kenya shilling that I use here, let's say we have one monetary note, it has the face of Nyerere, I can use it there, I can use it everywhere. That Msewa Nduthi, now, he doesn't, if there's too much competition here in Nairobi, so he's not getting much stuff, he can go to Eastern DRC and he starts Uber Goma, for example. We've opened it up so people are free to invest in other places. And Kenya being so much more advanced than many of these other ones, we're opening the market for everybody. Build it and they will come. We're entrepreneurial.
You know, we asked your fellow Mheshimiwa, the gentleman who preceded you, this question. You wax very philosophically, and it's beautiful to listen to. It's something you've clearly given thought, and that is a good thing. The issue, as you've clearly pointed out, has to do with how do you implement these things. But my concern, and which is what we raised with Mheshimiwa Kennedy Musyoka, was beyond a show like this and beyond the Mheshimiwa coming to a show like this, a deliberate plan to ensure people understand what it is that EALA does, so that you carry people with you.
Exactly.
The citizens of each country, you carry them with you, because if the citizens see the benefit of it, even if there is, monkeys are given a bad rap on this one, even if there's monkey business and their partisan interest now coming to the fore, the power of the citizenry plays an important role in this. Now,
Absolutely.
when you think of EALA and you think of what needs to be done with a parliament that is there, of which you are a member, do you think there ought to be a concerted and deliberate role that a communication department or a communication arm or a committee should play in matters concerning EALA?
Yes, I believe so. Absolutely. I agree with everything that you're saying. There is a communication department. And Ken, who was here before, was talking of, he's tried to get KBC to go and show what they're doing, but that's not good enough. We have to be more inventive in our approach of communicating to our people the benefits. We have to break it down to the simplest point. We have to show each person what the benefit is for them if we do this. You're absolutely right. I was going to mention that point. We need everybody from every corner shouting EAC for it to give the leadership the impetus to do work in it. As a legislator, you have a few jobs. You legislate on behalf of the people, you represent them, but your job is also to inform them. What I'm understanding is that how the assembly, it's a bit tight. You're not as able to go around and do what it is. But I have a political background and political communications. We have to be able to go to the people, explain to them what it is, and have each of them screaming, EALA, 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 EALA. And that is really the unspoken thing in terms of achieving implementation of this thing that we're talking about.
You know why I am focusing and perhaps sticking to this particular issue is when I look at the tenets of relationships that countries have, there's always bad blood somewhere. For instance, it is mentioned, it's anecdotal, yes, but how Tanzania and Kenya, or Tanzanians, not Tanzania, have issues. And how Kenyans are treated in Tanzania. There'll be stories about so-and-so's maize, so-and-so's eggs. Now, it's because in my mind, I'm listening to all these and I say, our citizens don't seem, this integration thing, we talk about it, but it seems to be at some level, the citizenry don't relate to this issue of integrity. Now, my mind goes back to a time when you had some xenophobic issues in South Africa. Now, some of the people who were targeted were people who are part and parcel of their economic community. And the reason, again, is the locals felt that their jobs were being taken. They were being disadvantaged. Now, given Kenyans, given the way we are and the aggressive nature in which we approach business, wouldn't one be right in saying that our neighbors would be fearful of opening our borders and letting the marauding Kenyans in? Because who is to tell what Kenyans will do once they get to your country?
That's absolutely true. The issue of South Africa is slightly different. And that comes with Mandela, Rainbow Nation, saying we forgive and move on. And that's a time bomb of its own. I won't get into it right now. But the one I like to use is the European Union. They had those negative predispositions about one another. They had that, but they were able to overcome it. Now, there are those countries who did it better than the others. For example, the UK could not overcome their prejudice, and they left, and look where they are right now. But the thing is, this economic nationalism is hurting us more as a region, as a people. If everybody is saying, in order for me to grow, yes, I know I need you, but I'd rather stay like this, so because I don't want you to come in.
Because I don't trust you.
Yeah. So we have to really focus on cultural integration. People are afraid of what they don't know, what they don't understand. And it's a shame that 60 years after all these countries have gotten independence, they failed. These countries have failed. These countries are not A-star economies. They've all had their presidents, their systems. They've not achieved what it is. And so now the impetus, I feel, is on the people. I said this in an interview last week. We have to move on from the political and the political machinations, which is tribalism, and the things that are used to manipulate our impetus, and foster proper relations between the people. Who's the highest artist that you play on this radio station? It's Diamond Platinum. Growing up, I could not breathe without hearing Koffi Olumide being played by my mother. Yeah? There's so many things. You have people saying they like Matoke from Uganda, they like whatever. It's for us to enhance those things. First, it's not going to be by force. We have to culturally be intertwined. But if here at home we're fighting over tribes, that's why they don't want us. It's not the business thing. They say, Wakenya wako na vita.
But Mheshimiwa, you know, we are in the realm of what we call identity politics. And usually it's nestled within, say, certain confines, like within Kenya, Uganda. All these regions have their identity politics. So we're already that way inclined. And I'm focusing on this one, and I will not speak on it again until another day. But the East African community has the opportunity of overriding all these things, because the integrative part of the community provides an opportunity for people to get along at that level. So if they're going to be quarreling and quibbling among themselves locally, well, that's a different matter. But at that other level, the benefits that accrue from that understanding, I think, will benefit the people of this region far more than they even realize. But they can't benefit until they get to a point where they understand it and in so doing participate in it fully.
Better. Let's take a break on that note so that then we can continue the conversation. 27 minutes to 9, WINNIE ODINGA, MP-elect, the East African Legislative Assembly. Mheshimiwa WINNIE ODINGA.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's Eric Latif Ndu Oko, CT Muga, and our guest is WINNIE ODINGA, MP-elect for the East African Legislative Assembly, talking about her plans for the next 5 years, serving as a member of the East African Legislative Assembly. You told us, WINNIE, you are looking at that Nduthi person and looking at the opportunities that this person then can tap into with the wider East African community. And if the East Africa community was functioning as it was designed to function, then all of us would get the benefits. You talked about, look, how can we make use of our comparative advantages and see if we are better on this, somebody else is better on the other. Is it something that you'd go and take, for example, as a bill or motion to the East African Legislative Assembly and say, let's create special economic zones, for example, or special production zones, leveraging on the strengths of each individual state?
Absolutely. You know, comparative advantage, first of all, is created. It doesn't come from heaven. You create it. And the thing that makes it work is scale. Now, when I travel throughout this country, we have what are called tinfoil slums. And I've flown actually over Kenya into Tanzania. And you know exactly where the border is. Because in Tanzania, because of their system, they've seen collective farming is better, they're more productive. For me, I said my thing is based on young people and data, internet data. We need to first look at a long-term plan. Where will the world be in that 15 years? What will be their needs? The food basket we know will be in Africa. But what will be the demand? What do we need to focus on? Once we're able to identify that, we need to map out what resources we have. We need a data bank of what's the soil here, what's the temperature, what's the atmospheric pressure. Hey, you can't be cutting down trees in the DRC. It's affecting climate change. You're causing drought in Kenya. We need to have a data bank of every bit of this region so that when the world comes to us, it's no more handouts. We're saying, yes, we've been growing these. You want avocado face masks? We've been growing for 7 years. We have 50,000 hectares of avocado. We've been doing this for flowers. We've been doing this there. We have this here. So that you don't have a case like what happened last week. I was so ashamed. You just see people twerking for Bill Gates over GMO. But why are we in that state? Why are the coffers empty? There was something that used to happen in the Grand Coalition government where you sit with the meteorological department, they tell you your rains for next year, you plan, they tell you, so add stock here, sell this, you're going to have an overflow. There has to be some planning. Now, Bill Gates, what's Bill Gates' net worth? Does anybody know?
It fluctuates. I don't know what the current one is.
But it's in the billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions.
Yes.
What's the GDP of Burundi or Rwanda or whatever? Bill Gates can buy that country. So when he goes and attacks that country by himself, the country doesn't have anything. They can't fight back. Yeah? And they're being given a product that's not good for them. Now, if you create the policy at EALA and say that here in the East African Union, this is our policy on GMO. This is our study. Before anybody in this country moves, this is our study, and from that we've created this policy, and you're not going to come to any of these countries. We're going to talk about it. I've heard people saying how GMO is good for them and whatever. I lived in America. Have you seen the size of Americans? GMO is not something that is good for us right now. And even if it's is being used as an intervention, what are we doing to further not have to need this intervention? If it's an immediate intervention because people are starving to death. As Africans, we're not unique. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. So after you've planned it out, we find out, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to make this. Now, what do we need for you to be able to do it? Is it machinery? You need to start thinking of vertical farming, polytunneling. We can't keep talking about irrigation and drip irrigation. It's moved further, artificial intelligence, robotics in farming. So what is it? Is a question that we can buy it? Can we make it? Okay, maybe as they're learning how to make it, we've bought a few, but we're also going to have a factory in Kampala where they'll be making it. You see, we can do all these things at the same time, but if we keep moving as separate entities in this place, it's not beneficial to any of us.
But why are we moving as separate entities?
Because we need money. And the people who give...
Each entity?
Yes. And the people who give us money don't want us to move as a union. It's better for them. It's better for them when your
So this talks about the political leadership of the entities, right? It talks about at that national level. The leaders of the East African community.
I would say global politics. I would just call it global politics.
Let's talk about the leaders of the East African community because they are the ones who are in charge of ensuring that we have this proper integration
now I'm not
fully
speaking
realized.
As opposition. Now those would be my bosses. So now...
Leaders include you, as a member of the East African Legislative Assembly, right? Yeah. Taking us towards this position where we have proper integration of the East African community, common markets, single monetary union, a single political federation. We've had MPs sitting in Arusha for all these years. And yet, most we've done is we come up with pieces of legislation. Now there is a legislation on the monetary union. But the realization of it is, the dream is to have a single East African currency by 2024. I mean, you have studied a lot because you have applied for this particular job. How close are we to even getting this single currency in a year's time?
You know, I was recently writing an article on the benefits and costs of COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war and the world inflation on these countries. And I kept pivoting to, actually, for us as a region, yes, we've been hit hard by the rising cost of prices, but there's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to pivot as nations. The situation has gotten extremely desperate. Countries are not giving out money anymore. China's closed its doors. All we're left with right now is IMF, and IMF has so many strings attached. So it's an opportunity for us to be inventive and to pivot and to try new ways for us to be productive. And I think it's a blessing in Africa, and if we overlook it, we'll be doing the biggest mistake of our lives.
Okay. Even as you say that, and I hear you loud and clear, that we also look at nations who seem to have made a step forward, right? Whether they're coming together with their regional partners or not, but the principle remains the same, that regardless of the noise that you hear outside, you roll up the window and you do what is best for you at that time. Would you apply the same principle for the regional bodies that we see, that we understand what the reality is? You said, yeah, we go that way because we need money, isn't it? But in the long run, what would be better for the regional bodies on the African continent is to probably shut out the noise and do what's best for you at that time. Or how do you see that happening today? If you need money, something that really steps on your neck, isn't it? But then you know that the things you must implement have far outreaching benefits than taking the money in the interim. How do you make that happen?
That question has many answers, some of which are the global dark, if you've ever heard of that. Why countries or leaders do what they do, and what foreign countries do to our leaders that we may not even know of, to have situations such as that. One of the best examples of what you're describing is the AU, right? The African Union has by far not been able to achieve much except policy year after year. But the leadership of the AU is picked not on this continent, but picked off this continent by big powers. The question that you're asking is difficult for me to answer because I would be exposing things that have gotten a lot of people in a lot of trouble. The time when leaders are unable to be bullied by foreign countries is when there's pressure at home from the citizenry. When the people are saying, this is what we want. When the people are pushing, this is what we want. Everywhere the president turns, he's just hearing, this is it, this is what we want. This is what I mean by also by political participation of young people. We actually have to get out and agitate. We actually have to get out as far as we can get out and agitate and say, hey, we're not just going to sit here and die hungry, okay? There's a market there. All you have to do is tell your minister to implement this. That's what we need to do. So I would like to answer it that way and leave it there.
You know, one of the things that perhaps whenever we discuss geopolitics, we look at countries, and in my mind, we focus on the wrong entity. We should look at the leaders of the countries. And the reason why I say this is my view. Many African leaders treat their countries as their own personal property. I mean, democracy notwithstanding, the way they go about the business, the way they go about handling the resources, the interest of the people doesn't take second or third place. It takes 10th place to 20th place. Now, a community like the one we're talking about, the one you're going to represent Kenya in, has existed before. And some of the things that we're pursuing, like that monetary unity, it actually existed. We had even integrated services. We had East African Harbours, Railways and Harbours Corporation. We had the airline. We had the post office. It's not as though it's something we didn't do, we couldn't have done. And all this even preceded the EU in terms of getting it together so that it can work as a unit. So when you say there are forces that fight it, that I can understand. However, when you have a background where you've actually seen something work, you are far better off than someone who's starting right from scratch. So now, identity politics and the personal interests of political leaders notwithstanding, the youth that you speak of and the power of the numbers they have, it's dissipated because in my mind, as somebody who's older, the youth seems to be following in the footsteps of those who are older, the very thing they should not do. When I say footsteps, I mean, there's a concept we refer to in Kenya called rent seeking, where people do things, people do things because they stand to gain. And it isn't just the youth, it's someone has a political position, wherever it is, no matter how small, the first port of call is how do I, not how do the people I represent gain. Now, when you're in EALA and you discuss some of these matters, the youth become pivotal to the discussion because that's the future. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not, the youth are the future. How do you address the issues of the youth and ensure that they are positioned to benefit not just from EALA, but to benefit from the resources of the individual countries?
That's a question I want to think about deeply. Off the top of my head, we are living in a different world. This is not the world of a protest on the street per se. There's different forms of protest. There's different forms of expressing yourselves. Because of social media, everything is curated for the user. You follow who you're following, you follow who you're following. Everything has become centered on the individual. But the beauty of that is that people are able to see new things that they like. They're able to learn new skills online. I love the story of Diego, who learned how to throw the javelin and broke the record from YouTube. I believe the number one, this is not factoring in food, water, and shelter. The number one thing we have to do is to increase internet connectivity for the region. Now, this is, remember what I said about the EU, how they started because of using economic benefit? Mm-hmm. This would be a project that will need all of these countries to participate. From my research, the best place, we have a fiber cable to Mombasa. The best place to put a data center would be Kisumu. Why? Kisumu is 1 hour flight to all the capital cities in East and Central Africa. From Bangui, which is not yet in here, Bangui in Central African Republic, not Bangui. No, you understood, but I realized.
He's eternally grateful for that clarification.
I knew you were not talking about the vegetable, yes.
No. To all these places. Yeah. So when you have it, you put an undersea cable like through the lake, and you've connected to the other side. Necessity is the mother of invention. I think we truly underrate the capability of a young person to self-teach, to do business on their own, to improve their business through the use of the internet. So that is something I strongly believe. Now, you can say it's theoretical, it's not practical, such a thing can't happen. However, in all these countries, it doesn't matter where you go, everybody's on their phone. Everybody is on their phone. It doesn't matter where you go. They always like to give statistics. I've not met a person without a phone yet or access to one. So if this is the thing they're telling you, they're showing you, this is where we are, this is where we talk, this is what makes us better, then we have to enhance that capacity. And we have to enhance it regionally. So if you're doing a special economic zone there, for example, just do the same model you did in Lamu, where they come and this is for the Ugandan, this is for the what, this is for who, and we're up there.
You know, I am in a position where I'm lamenting the youth of the 21st century, because what isn't seen is that the forward movement that this country has achieved politically and even economically was spearheaded and propelled by youth. This is what they don't see. The political leaders we had at independence were youth. All the political leaders who are now old men and women, they were youth. This is not an agenda they started pushing when they were older. They started pushing the agenda when they were very young. And you see, I'm looking at the youth of the 21st century, and now I've become regional. I've become localized. And I'm looking at the young leaders of this country, and I'm asking, where are the young leaders who are pushing a national agenda? Where? Someone has to point one and tell me that particular person is pushing a national agenda. They're all pushing either a party agenda or an individual agenda. And in the absence, and you see, in the past, there were groups. There were people who had an ideological similarity. Now I don't see it. So even as we talk about it, it's not theoretical. I know it's possible, but where are they?
You asking me?
Yes, I am.
I don't know, but I'm going to find them. You see, traditionally as Africans, we used to solve things palaver. We sit under a tree and we talk about it. I would love to see an EAC where the leaders sit peacefully and they agree for those things. Now, when it comes to young people, I pose the question, where is our black leader? As black people, we have always had our black leader, our North Star. If you think of Mandela, if you think of Martin Luther King, then you come to Mandela. After Mandela, Kofi Annan was there a bit as the UN Secretary General. Then we had Obama. And then...
There's a gentleman you might know of. It's called Raila Odinga.
I'm unable to see him objectively.
Yes, so let me talk about it objectively, because the role you say, if you look at Raila Odinga's history, he started when he was a very young person. He was young then. But whatever it is he stood for, he and others, it's an agenda that has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And as my sister here and I saying, well, boom, here we are. See, now, there's something that they believed in. There's something they wanted to see. In the same way as the so-called founding fathers, there's something they had this vision. You see, the question I'm asking is the same one. Where are these young leaders who...
Well, you see, the difference with that, they did not sell their stories themselves. Martin Luther King became a bigger thing after his death. His story was sold around the world by his allies, his comrades, his followers. Mandela, for 27 years, it was a big thing all over the world. People didn't even know who Mandela was because of the people pushing his story and selling his story. When Obama became a president, we had a national holiday here. So we, as Kenyans, also have to see what we have and push the story. But the main character in the story is not to push his story out there by himself.
Winnie, the issue of the image someone creates through what they represent over a long period of time. The passage of time has a way of watering it down, but again, these are collective issues. People will stand out in that group, but they're collective. See, I'm asking the question, that group of Raila Odinga, we know the individuals who are involved, then there are many.
No, I understand your question. You see,
Yes.
there is a vacuum, but something will sprout from it. What's that saying they say about
Nature
this?
abhors the vacuum.
It will come out. We used to be excited about Malema. That story went badly.
I actually don't think there's a vacuum.
There's a young guy in Zimbabwe called Chamisa.
Yes.
Brilliant. That's somebody to watch. There are different people in the regions that are going to come up. We had a stint there with Bobby Wine. Let's see if he can reinvent himself.
Who are the people with him? You see, the thing is, that sort of thinking, there'll be individuals who stand out, but as I said, there are others who think like them.
Yeah, but you see, you're looking for something, City. You're looking for something that is described as revolutionary in thinking and working the certain models of operandi that you associate with.
Yes.
It has changed.
The new one is different, and that's why you cannot see it.
How different?
That's why you cannot see
At
it.
some point, I have to see it because
Yeah.
it has to manifest itself.
Do you have TikTok?
Yeah.
What TikTok is?
Which TikTok is asking?
That's why it's manifesting itself.
I'm with Winnie. I don't think there's a vacuum. I think it's actually happening.
It's just happening in different forms. It's happening in dance. Look what's happening in that music video over there. That never happened. That's a form of protest. Now, we had a presidential candidate who was pushing for the use of marijuana. And I sat with my father and I told him, Dad, if you weren't running, I'd probably vote for this guy. And he asked me why. I said, because I find myself agreeing with the things he's saying. Like, fine, if anybody is caught harming a child or whatever, we'll shoot them in Uhuru Park. Yeah.
severest punishment.
You
We've got to conclude that. Thank you very much for coming today. We've talked to you before on phone, on video, but this is the first time you've been in the studio.
Yeah.
Come again, right? And let's use this opportunity.
The problem is you're so early. I'm not a morning person. I'm a more...
It's the whole worm thing.
Now you'll be a morning person.
No, I sleep from 3 to 9, so... but I'll try my best. I'd love to come back. It's been a pleasure.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
WINNIE ODINGA, MP-elect, East Africa Legislative Assembly. Keep it here for more conversations.